Greetings, Earthlings! Have you ever broken something whilst trying to update your website? Or maybe you want to experiment with a new design but are worried about messing up your live site? Well, today I'm going to show you how to avoid those heart-stopping moments by setting up a local development environment for a Joomla website using the Astroid framework. For demonstration purposes, I will be using an AMP called MAMP, but I will try to keep this all as general as possible so you can adopt this workflow to an AMP of your choice. The best part is that with the exception of MAMP, all of these tools are open source. MAMP is by no means a requirement, and there are plenty of open source AMPs out there in very broad, non-technical terms. What we're doing here is similar to setting up a test kitchen for a restaurant, but with an added layer of safety. Imagine a chef not only experimenting in a separate test kitchen, but doing so in a completely isolated space where any mistakes or accidents couldn't possibly affect the main restaurant or its customers. First, we need to get all of our ingredients. We'll download a special package that has everything we need. If it helps, think of it like getting a meal kit delivered to your door. Here is what we want to set up. It's a Joomla site with the Astroid framework already installed. It also includes some demo content, and we have categories in the background, and we have blog articles up front, and different layouts, and the mega menu, and much more. Okay. Let's get started. We navigate to the asteroidframe.work site and head to the download section. We can access this section in various ways directly from the Astroid site and will be automatically taken to the latest Astroid release. If, for whatever reason, we navigate to this GitHub page from another location, chances are that we'll be presented with a list of different versions with their corresponding version numbers. Now we're focusing on installing the latest version, so that's what we're looking for. At the most basic level, your AMP must have a sufficiently high PHP and MySQL version to support the latest version of Joomla. On a side note, I encountered this issue last year when MAMP had not been updated for what seemed like an eternity. Although the PHP was adequate, the MySQL version was not. Consequently, I resorted to using Herd as a workaround on my Mac. Fortunately for me, the old blue elephant, for some inexplicable reason, has made an unexpected return from the brink of extinction. Now, inside each Astroid release version, there are usually 4 files. It can vary for different reasons, and I'm not going to go into that now, but we are looking for the Quickstart zip. We'll download this to our computer locally. I'm on a Mac and I'm saving it to my downloads folder. I'll open the Finder and double click on the file to extract it. Now what we're looking at here is basically a Joomla install with the Astroid framework and a generous smattering of demo content thrown in for good measure. We now have all of our ingredients unpacked and ready to use. This is a little bit like having all of your cooking ingredients measured and laid out ready before starting a recipe. It is now time to set up our workspace. Just like a chef needs an organized kitchen counter, we need to create a special folder where we'll get organized. Now, first off, we're going to create a folder on the Finder level. I'll do this in the users folder under my username, and then in the folder sites, and in here another folder called localhost. Now inside the localhost folder there are several other folders already, each containing a website. I'll create a new folder here. Now I've done this before, so this time around I'm going to add a C to the end to indicate that this is essentially my third version of this site, my boilerplate site. Now we have a new folder in our localhost folder inside the default sites folder. On a Mac with another AMP, this path is likely to be similar. However, on a PC, frankly, I don't know, but I'm guessing that there is some kind of default path for local site development. At this point, we need to point our AMP to our currently empty folder on the Finder level. Now, how and where you actually do the following in your AMP of choice will probably vary slightly. But here in MAMP, we notice in the left-hand sidebar where we manage our sites, right at the bottom, we can click the little Create Site button and select Create a New Site. We'll choose the empty option and click Continue. We'll give the site a name, and I'm going to call this 2025 Astroid Quickstart C, just like the folder we created earlier. Now we'll point our AMP program at the folder, which is currently empty. Strictly speaking, we have not created anything as such at this point, but we are laying solid foundations. Now let's pause for a quick look at a couple of interesting nuances with respect to our empty site folder. First, at the Finder level, you'll notice an index file. And secondly, using MAMP's open option, this file displays a simple message in our browser. The new site was set up successfully. If you can see this page, your new site was set up successfully. Now web content can be added and this placeholder page should be replaced or deleted. So we're talking about the index file here. It needs to go. And this, of course, is exactly what we will be replacing in our next step. Now note, while the process might vary slightly depending on your AMP setup, the basic concept remains the same. Back on the Finder level, I'll navigate inside the empty folder I just created in the site's localhost folder and drag the contents of the extracted zip file into it. The pieces of the puzzle are slowly falling into place, and from here on in, we'll be working with the contents of this folder in our AMP. Now, returning briefly to MAMP, because this is the kind of person I am, I'm just going to organize things here a little bit and drag my newly created site into a specific folder. I'm using this folder in MAMP to help me organize a total of 3 sites that I want to work on parallel, all using the same Quickstart boilerplate strategy. Just to be perfectly clear, this folder structure in MAMP is specific to MAMP and has nothing to do with the folder structure on the Finder level. Your AMP may or may not have this functionality. One way or the other, this aspect of the workflow is not mission critical. Now, while we're here, let's take a quick look at something that will make more sense shortly. This essentially is a preview and it is intended to help understand how we connect the dots as we move forward. Now, remember our empty folder, which is now populated with our extracted backup files. Let's open it through our AMP and jump straight to the second page of the restoration interface. The restoration of site's main database page. Pay special attention to the connection information section. Here we'll see all the database details we'll need later. Database server hostname, username, password, database name. And of course we have the database table prefix name, which is also particularly important. This preview shows us exactly what information we'll need when we create that database, which is our next step. Find these tutorials helpful? Like and subscribe. Every kitchen requires both counter space for preparation and cabinets for storage. In this section, we'll organize our ingredients using a database, which is akin to setting up your pantry shelves before placing and arranging items. In MAMP, we are going to create a storage space, a database, and connect it with our downloaded files. The database will initially be empty, but this will change in due course. This process lays the foundation for our pre-built Joomla Astroid website. The key thing to understand is that from now on, we'll use our web browser as the control panel to manage our site. Our AMP software will work quietly in the background, doing the heavy lifting whilst we focus on organizing and designing through our web browser. Now, if we have not done so already, we need to fire up our AMP servers. We're going to need the servers running to, as the name suggests, serve information. And without the servers running, there would be nothing to serve the database content and the web pages to your browser. So no matter what you try to access, be it phpMyAdmin or your Joomla site, be it the back end or the front end, none of this would be available. Now we want to access the phpMyAdmin web interface. Whilst the path to the phpMyAdmin varies depending on your specific AMP package, the interface itself looks the same everywhere. For MAMP users, simply click the Web Start Page button and navigate to the MySQL section in your browser and select phpMyAdmin. Other AMP packages will have similar access points, which you will need to locate. Once there, we'll create a new database. Remember that whilst we're using this browser interface to give instructions, the AMP package is doing all the actual work behind the scenes. We're simply telling it what to do through the phpAdmin control panel. Now let's create our database. We look for the New button. It's kind of hard to spot at first glance. And then we click to start the database creation. We're going to name our database 2025 Quickstart Take C. And this follows our established naming convention, and it's going to make it easier to identify later. We need to remember this name. Leave the other settings at the default values. So for example, format, the default format is fine. Username and password are typically set to root automatically. After confirming these settings, we'll have an empty database ready to restore our Quickstart package into. Let's take a moment in phpMyAdmin to compare two instances of the same boilerplate site. On one side, we have our 2025 Quickstart Take B, a fully restored and complete version of our boilerplate template. On the other side, we have a work in progress, if you will. It is our newly created empty database, which will soon become 2025 Quickstart Take C. Now, I think the contrast is striking. The restored database is full of tables, entries, and data structures, whilst the empty database is pristine and waiting for our instructions. This preview, I believe, gives you an idea of what we'll have after the restoration, since we're working with the exact same boilerplate template. Now, one key detail to notice in our restored example is the unique table prefix in the left-hand side of our interface. During the restoration process of our empty database, we'll generate our own unique prefix. This option will appear on the second page of the restoration interface. Each time you restore a site, a new random prefix is generated, ensuring that each restoration has its own distinct table identification. We had a sneak peek at this in the previous section, and as a matter of interest, amongst other databases in here, we also have a 2025 Quickstart Take A database. Both 2025 Quickstart Take A and 2025 Quickstart Take B have at this point been fully restored. Now comes the fun part, actually putting everything together. This is like following our recipe step by step to create our dish. And now that we've laid the groundwork, let's begin restoring our boilerplate site. Here's what we'll do. First, we'll point MAMP to the correct folder. When we do this, MAMP will automatically locate the backup files we unzipped earlier. These files contain everything needed to populate our empty database with our site's content. We are going to go to the Open in Web option, and we're going to go to the first page of our restoration script. Now this is where the actual restoration process begins. Let's understand where things are located. We can do this by comparing the URL in our browser with the corresponding path in the Finder. This helps us verify that the restoration script is looking in the right locations. On the first page of restoration, we're seeing mostly green indicators, no critical red issues that would prevent the restoration, and any minor issues here can be adjusted later after installation. The backup information and site information sections provide valuable server configuration details. The closer these match, the smoother our restoration will be. With everything looking pretty good, we'll click Next. On the database configuration page, the connection information section is mission critical. This is where we connect to our empty database. Now we're going to keep the default database type as it is, and database server host, localhost typically works, but verify this for your setup. Username and password, usually root and root. These were automatically set up for us when we created our database. Database name, this is critical. We're going to select the empty database we created earlier as our restoration target. Now the table prefix section. Remember the database we looked at earlier with all of those prefixed tables? This is where that prefix gets generated for our new database. Each restoration creates a unique prefix for all of our tables. So it's time to actually finally start the restoration. Next. Next. And the restoration process begins. In the site settings section, I'm going to give the site a recognizable name, for example, QS take C, and I'm going to add an email address. It's recommended, but optional. Now, with respect to the super user admin credentials, this is where you set up your Joomla administration login details. Now, these are completely separate from the database credentials we used earlier. Use simple, memorable credentials for development purposes. This saves you from having to search through the restore database later for login information. And now the security step. After successful restoration, we must remove the restoration files and folders. This includes all the extracted package files we used during the restore process. Leaving these files on your server is a serious security risk, at the very latest when you go live. Find these tutorials helpful? Like and subscribe. We are also creating a newsletter with more development tips and tricks to ease your Astroid and Joomla worries. Success! The restoration completed successfully. MAMP has transferred all of our website content from the backup files into our previously empty database. By the way, this is your first and last time accessing the site through the restoration script. Depending on the functionality of your AMP, you might want to bookmark your front and back end URLs at this point. In my case, this would be the following, but will vary for you. So the front end, I'm looking at my folder where my site is stored and a port number. And for the back end, for the administration side of things, I'm looking at the same path pretty much, the folder name, the port number and the word administrator added to the end. You can log in with your newly created admin credentials, not the database root credentials, and from now on, these bookmarks will be your direct routes to your site. The restoration entry point will be removed when we clean up the installation files. Once you've successfully set up one development environment, managing multiple sites, multiple development environments becomes surprisingly straightforward. I've already set up Quickstart A and B, and now of course we have C, each linked to its own database with our AMP of choice doing the heavy lifting in the background. With the clear strategy we've established for folder structures and URLs, we have consistent patterns with only minor variations. As always, how exactly this will work in your development environment will vary. Important here is the principle. Let's check out Quickstart A first. Opening it in my browser, you can see I've made some really basic changes to the header. Now let's add administrator to the URL to access the back end. And here we are in the Quickstart A admin panel. Let's open this site in split view so that we can see both the front and back end parallel. Now for Quickstart B. Opening it in the browser, and again I've made some really basic customizations, and adding administrator to the URL, we get to the Quickstart B admin panel. Let's also open this in split view, and I think what we're doing here is becoming apparent. Finally, let's look at the site we just created, Quickstart C, opening it in the browser. So let's add administrator to the URL, and we're going to log in with our credentials that we created previously, our Joomla login credentials. And we're going to open the front end in split view. Let's make a quick customization for demonstration purposes. Going to Menus, Main Menu, Home. I see that this page uses the Home Page 5 variation of the Astroid template. And now we're going to go to System, Site Template Styles, and we're looking for the same Home Page 5 version of the Astroid template. We're going to click Options, and we're coming in here on the left hand side and looking for the logo option specifically. We're going to change the logo text to 2025 Astroid QSC. Saving and refreshing to see our changes, and let's also change the header color. Finding the background color, setting for the header, and selecting a new color. And saving and refreshing to see our updated site. Now the key takeaway here is that we now have 3 independent sites running through our AMP and can experiment without fear of breaking our live site. Now I'm mainly showing this setup for demonstration purposes. Whether running multiple sites like this makes sense for your specific workflow is something you'll need to evaluate. The possibilities are endless. I hope these tutorials spark your creativity and help you build something fabulous. For more advanced techniques, join us on the Astroid and Joomla Seamlessly YouTube channel.